Hi, my name is Simone Williams, and welcome to episode 4 of Art Like Everything Else, the podcast. Alrighty, so as we jump into this episode, I wanted to start with a quote from the movie Melancholia, directed by Lav Diaz. The quote goes, "Because of sadness, there is poetry. Because of sadness, there is music. Because of sadness, there is cinema. Because of sadness, there are paintings, there are novels." This quote was not only beautiful, but it touches on something I wanted to get into for today's episode. I really do believe that in today's day and age, as much as we want to seek, as much as we want to have in our lives, like just goodness in our lives, there will be sadness. There will be bad feelings or times where you are not going to feel your best. And what I'm hoping to do with this episode is actually show you that there's a way to look at these feelings, not just as only ever something terrible. I believe that these types of feelings can be something that's quite human. It's very, very human, but just because it is human, and just because we often would like to avoid these feelings, doesn't mean it is not capable of creating beauty. So kind of getting right into the topic, I really do feel like the bad, or like the sadness, or the grief, or the feelings that we often try to avoid, while inevitable, is capable of creating and cultivating very beautiful things. These feelings can often even lead to connection. Take, for example, in the video, I will be linking in the description, Stephen Colbert and Anderson Coopin are having a conversation around grief. So a quote that stuck out to me during this conversation was said by Stephen Colbert. He said, "What do you get from loss? You get awareness of other people's loss, which allows you to connect with that other person, which allows you to love more deeply and to understand what it is like to be a human being." And I thought that this quote was so relevant to the conversation at hand. Very oftentimes in times of grief, sadness, and even anger, it is possible to find connection and understand even more what it is like to be human. Maybe it's not always in that very specific moment, but there are often ways you can reflect on and use to connect with people at a different time. Like there are times that I have lived through that I would never want to experience again if it could be helped. But it's because I've experienced those things that I've come to be able to connect with people that I may not have met prior to those events. It was honestly in one of these times where I actually got the chance to meet someone who I consider to be one of my closest friends to this day. No, I would not like to experience that again, but it was because I experienced that I got to meet these people who I care about in my life now, who mean so very much to me. And I just think that's cool. And it's something really important to consider when it comes to this inevitability of the bad happening. It doesn't have to be terrible in and of itself. Like, yes, the event that happened is terrible. Yes, it is possible to have still wanted the good thing to happen, but to be grateful for the bad thing that happened because it led to this other good thing happening. I also think the bad, quote unquote bad, can be used as a means of creation and inspiration. So like in the starting quote that I read from the movie Melancholia, because of sadness there is poetry, because of sadness there is music, because of sadness there is cinema. All of these things that were created and inspired from these emotions that people would prefer to avoid. It reminds me of this artist I found not too long ago by South Korean artist and producer Mokyo. I came across his music from his song Udium, which I can also link in the description. It's a really beautiful song, and it's a song he wrote after experienced grief from the loss of his mother. Grief in this case not only inspired and led to the creation of art from this artist, but it also created a means of connection for those who have gone through the same or similar situations. Grief doesn't have to only ever be grief. These quote unquote bad feelings are allowed to be so much more. There are so many pictures, so many songs, so many movies even that detail heartbreak, that detail grief, that detail sadness, and a deep, deep despair. But it is no less art simply because it came from or it happened as a result of these unwelcome experiences. Kind of like even even piggybacking off of what I said previously, like yes, it would have been much preferable for that bad thing to not have happened. But it is because of that bad thing that happened, I got to have this experience, meet these people, and it is possible for me to be grateful for at least that. I don't want to imply that you have to be grateful, simply that it is possible to exist within a both and dichotomy rather than an either or. Like, yes, there are people I would much rather have still be here, and experiences I would have much rather not had to experience. But even though they are not here, and even though I had those experiences, I also got to meet some really cool people and do some really cool things as a result. I think there are so many ways to look at these quote unquote bad emotions and to not have the bad just be the bad because it shows up in other areas. Like maybe when you're in like this really deep depression, the bad, that's kind of all you see, and you start to feel like that's all there is. And when you're in it, it's hard to see what good could possibly come after that experience. But it's possible. I do believe it is very much possible to have good come out of even those terrible experiences. Then again, I also believe that these quote unquote bad feelings or these terrible experiences can be used as a means of inspiration or even guidance. I personally do believe that like these feelings don't have to exist without use. I believe it's possible to use these feelings almost as fuel to fight for something better to happen or for something more to happen. Like personally for me, I have experienced great grief, and it is because I have experienced great grief that I know I am capable of a lot of love. It is because I know I have experienced deep despair that I have become almost so desperate for joy that I do start to see it in the little things, that I've learned to seek joy out in as many ways as possible. It is because I have felt so much anger and such helplessness that I have created hope for myself, that I have created hope and a desire for things to not remain the same as they are. I believe it is possible to use these feelings, to use sadness, to use the anger, to use the grief, to use it all to work towards or to aim for something even better. And to even just experience or like just enjoy those good things, you do have all the more. But yeah, that's kind of all that I have for today's episode. My closeout for today is a quote. This quote is from the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, and it was said by Wayman, who is the father character in the movie. The quote goes, "When I choose to see the good side of things, I'm not being naive. It is strategic and necessary. It's how I've learned to survive through everything." I feel like that perfectly kind of wraps up everything I've been talking about this episode. It is so important to survive. It is very important to survive, and part of survival will be the enduring of those bad things, the enduring of grief, the enduring of sadness, the enduring of helplessness, the enduring of despair. I think it is really important that not only we survive, but we seek to continue to be fully human. Anyways, that's all I have for today's episode. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.